Your soulmate is about to make a bold move. This will shock everyone. My beloved child, hold your thoughts for just a moment, because what is quietly forming behind the scenes is far greater than anyone around you realizes. There is a movement that has not announced itself yet. No loud signal. No dramatic entrance. Just silent preparation. And that silence is exactly why almost everyone will miss what is coming, until the very moment it becomes impossible to ignore. You have wondered why certain conversations never happened. Why certain words were left unspoken. Why someone seemed close one day and distant the next. But what if none of those moments were signs of failure? What if they were only pieces being arranged into a picture you could not yet see? Stay with this for a little longer. There is a reason this message found you today. The person connected to your future has been standing at the edge of a decision that feels much bigger than they expected. Every passing day has pushed them closer to a single realization. They can no longer remain where they are emotionally. They can no longer pretend that silence is enough. Something inside them has changed, and once that kind of change begins, it refuses to move backward. The surprising part? Very few people around them understand what is happening. They notice the small differences but not the deeper reason behind them. They see hesitation but not the courage that is quietly growing beneath it. They hear fewer words but cannot hear the louder conversation taking place within the heart. Think about this. Have you ever watched the sky just before sunrise? It still looks like night. Everything appears unchanged. Yet the sun is already on its way. The world simply hasn't caught up to it yet. That is where this story is beginning. The bold move mentioned in this message is not born from impulse. It is born from clarity. Clarity that arrived after long moments of reflection. After questions that had no immediate answers. After realizing that some opportunities should never be allowed to disappear simply because fear spoke louder than hope. Something remarkable happens when a person finally becomes certain about what truly matters. Excuses lose their power. Doubt becomes smaller. The opinions of the crowd begin to fade into the background. And suddenly, one unexpected action has the power to change an entire direction. You may not see the preparation taking place, but preparation does not need an audience to be real. That is why this message matters. Not because it predicts a fixed future, but because it reminds you that life often shifts long before anyone notices the first visible sign. Imagine someone rehearsing countless conversations in their mind. Starting over each time. Changing every sentence. Wondering if the timing will ever feel perfect. Then discovering something unexpected. Perfect timing never arrives. Only courageous moments do. That realization is becoming impossible for your soulmate to ignore. There is a growing awareness that waiting forever protects nothing. It only delays what the heart already understands. Pause here for a second. What if the next chapter does not begin with dramatic fireworks? What if it begins with one honest decision? One unexpected conversation. One fearless step. Sometimes history changes quietly before it changes publicly. That is why those watching from the outside are often the most surprised. They only witness the final moment. They never see the weeks of invisible growth that made it possible. You are standing near one of those invisible moments now. It may not feel extraordinary today. It may even seem like everything is moving too slowly. But slow seasons often hide the strongest transformations. Listen carefully. Confidence is rarely loud at the beginning. It whispers. It grows. It learns. Then, almost without warning, it becomes impossible to stop. The bold move is not about proving something to the world. It is about choosing authenticity over hesitation. And when someone finally reaches that point, the reaction around them can surprise everyone who believed they would never change. There is still more to uncover. Because the decision itself is only the beginning. The real surprise is what happens immediately after that choice is made, and why nobody sees it coming until the very last moment. Don't rush away just yet. The next chapter reveals why this single step creates a ripple that reaches far beyond two people. And once you understand that connection, every piece of this story will begin to make sense. Before your mind races ahead, stay with this next piece, because the bold move itself is only one side of the story. What truly catches everyone off guard is the chain of events that begins the very second that decision is made. Most people believe life changes in giant leaps. In reality, it often changes through one quiet choice that suddenly makes every other choice easier. Picture this for a moment. Someone who spent weeks questioning every possibility suddenly reaches a point where the questions become lighter than the answers. They stop asking, "What if this doesn't work?" and begin asking, "What if I never give this a chance?" That single shift transforms everything. Your soulmate has been standing at exactly that crossroads. There have been moments when they almost stepped forward, only to pause again. Not because they lacked genuine feeling, but because they wanted certainty before movement. Yet certainty has a strange habit. It usually appears after the first courageous step, not before it. That is why this next phase feels different. Something inside them has become stronger than the fear of uncertainty. Notice something interesting. People often assume bold actions happen overnight. They imagine one dramatic morning where everything suddenly changes. But real transformation is quieter. It grows through hundreds of unnoticed thoughts until one day the heart simply refuses to stay where it once was. That day is drawing closer. And when it arrives, those watching from the outside will wonder how everything changed so quickly. They will never realize they are only witnessing the ending of a story that has been unfolding in silence for much longer. What if the greatest surprise isn't the bold move itself? What if the greatest surprise is how naturally everything begins falling into place afterward? Sometimes life waits patiently for one person to become brave enough to move first. Once that happens, conversations become easier. Misunderstandings begin to fade. New opportunities appear where empty spaces once existed. It is almost as though the path had been waiting all along. Take a slow breath and consider this. Have you ever solved a puzzle where the final piece suddenly made the entire picture obvious? Every other piece was already there, but nothing made sense until the last connection appeared. That is the feeling surrounding this moment. The picture has been forming quietly. The final connection is approaching. This is also why outside opinions begin losing their influence. The louder the inner clarity becomes, the quieter unnecessary distractions feel. People may continue offering advice, assumptions, or expectations, but someone who finally understands their own direction no longer depends on outside approval. That quiet confidence surprises everyone. Because confidence rarely announces itself. It simply acts. If these words resonate with you, let them continue their journey. Share your thoughts in the comments, and if these stories encourage your heart, subscribing allows us to keep exploring these meaningful moments together. Now listen closely. There is another layer no one expects. The bold move does more than reveal courage. It reveals truth. Truth has a remarkable way of changing how people see situations they thought they fully understood. Conversations that once seemed confusing suddenly become clear. Small details that were overlooked begin fitting together. Even those who doubted the possibility start recognizing that something genuine has been growing beneath the surface all along. Yet the most astonishing moment has not arrived. Because once this first step is taken, another unexpected response follows almost immediately, a response that no one around them is prepared to witness. And that is where this story becomes even more unforgettable. Wait, don't let this final chapter pass by too quickly, because the moment everyone thought would create confusion becomes the very moment that reveals unexpected clarity. What seemed impossible only a short time ago now begins unfolding with a calm confidence that nobody anticipated. This is where the story changes, not because of chance, but because someone finally chose authenticity over hesitation. The bold move has already spoken. Not through loud words. Not through dramatic promises. But through undeniable action. There is something remarkable about a person who reaches the point where fear no longer decides their future. They stop waiting for perfect conditions. They stop searching for guarantees. Instead, they trust what has been quietly growing within them all along. That quiet confidence becomes impossible to ignore. The people who once believed nothing would ever change suddenly begin asking themselves a different question. What happened? They search for one dramatic explanation. They expect one extraordinary event. But the real answer is much simpler. Courage was growing in silence. While everyone else was watching the outside story, the real transformation was taking place where no one could see it. That is why this moment feels so powerful. Sometimes the greatest surprise is not that someone changes. It is discovering who they truly were all along. Take a moment and imagine standing at the top of a mountain after a long climb. Looking back, every difficult step suddenly makes sense. The steep paths. The moments of doubt. The pauses. None of them were wasted. They were preparing you for the view waiting at the top. This journey carries that same feeling. The bold move was never just about reaching someone. It was about becoming someone. Someone brave enough to choose honesty. Someone strong enough to stop hiding behind uncertainty. Someone ready to build a future instead of endlessly imagining one. And here is the beautiful part. When one person chooses courage, it often inspires courage in others. That single decision creates a ripple far beyond what anyone expected. New conversations begin. Old misunderstandings lose their weight. Doors that once appeared firmly closed quietly begin opening. The future starts looking different, not because the world changed overnight, but because one heart decided to move forward. If this story has encouraged you today, let us know how it made you feel in the comments. Share it with someone who may need a little hope, and if you enjoy these journeys of inspiration, subscribing means you'll be here for every new story we explore together. Before this message comes to an end, hear one final thought. Never underestimate what can happen when patience and courage finally meet. Many people give up just before life begins revealing its next chapter. But those who remain hopeful long enough often discover that the waiting was never empty. It was preparation. The bold move that surprised everyone was only the visible beginning. The deeper story was written long before anyone noticed it. And perhaps that is the greatest reminder of all. Some of the most meaningful moments in life arrive quietly. They don't ask for attention. They simply appear when the time is right. So keep your heart open. Keep moving forward. Keep believing that today's unseen progress can become tomorrow's unforgettable breakthrough. Because sometimes the moment that shocks everyone is simply the moment someone finally becomes brave enough to be exactly who they were meant to be. One last revelation, because the ending of this story is not where the journey finishes, it is where a completely new chapter quietly begins. Most people believe the biggest moment is the bold move itself. But the truth is, the greatest transformation always comes after the decision has already been made. Think about that for a second. A single step has the power to rewrite an entire direction. Not because the road suddenly becomes perfect, but because movement creates possibilities that standing still never could. This is exactly where your soulmate's path is changing. The hesitation that once slowed every thought has begun to disappear. In its place is a calm determination that cannot easily be shaken. It is not loud. It does not seek attention. It simply keeps moving forward, one honest choice at a time. And that quiet determination carries a strength that surprises everyone. People often expect confidence to arrive with grand speeches or dramatic moments. Instead, real confidence usually arrives in silence. It is seen in actions, in consistency, in the willingness to keep showing up even when nobody is applauding. That is the energy surrounding this moment. Something beautiful begins to happen when two paths stop resisting the direction they were always meant to follow. Small coincidences begin to feel meaningful. Unexpected conversations happen naturally. The timing that once seemed impossible suddenly feels almost effortless. It is as though every delay had been preparing the perfect moment to unfold. Now imagine looking back months from now. You may realize that this very season, the one that felt uncertain, was actually the turning point. Not because everything changed overnight, but because someone finally stopped allowing fear to write the next chapter. Pause here. How many extraordinary stories began with one simple decision? One conversation. One message. One unexpected act of courage. History is filled with moments that looked ordinary while they were happening. Only later did people understand how important they truly were. That is why this message invites you to stay aware. Do not overlook the quiet moments. Do not underestimate small beginnings. The greatest breakthroughs rarely arrive with an announcement. They arrive through steady, intentional steps that slowly reshape everything around them. There is another reason this story matters. The bold move is not about impressing anyone. It is about alignment. When thoughts, intentions, and actions finally move in the same direction, life begins to feel lighter. Decisions become clearer. Unnecessary confusion fades. Even challenges begin revealing lessons instead of obstacles. That is the real surprise. The greatest victory is not changing someone else's opinion. It is finding the courage to live honestly with your own heart. And perhaps that is the message waiting beneath this entire story. Sometimes the future you have been imagining is not waiting for perfect circumstances. It is waiting for one brave choice. One sincere moment. One step that says, I am ready to move forward. As this chapter comes to a close, remember this. The most unforgettable stories are not written by people who never faced uncertainty. They are written by people who chose hope when uncertainty stood in front of them. Keep your eyes open. Keep your heart steady. Because the next page of this journey may arrive sooner than anyone expects, and when it does, the bold move that once seemed impossible will simply become the first sentence of an extraordinary new beginning. Listen carefully, because there is one final piece that almost no one thinks about. Long after the excitement of the bold move fades, something even more meaningful begins to unfold. This is the chapter that people rarely witness, yet it is the one that determines whether a remarkable moment becomes a remarkable future.